Now, what would happen if you ate like a cow? I'm not talking about when you look out into the field and you see this cow grazing on the grass. I'm talking about what a cow eats in the last 200 days of its life. This cow is forced to consume a tremendous amount of starch. The cow is prevented from doing a lot of exercise because they're very small spaces, and they're put in front of this starch 3 times a day. Their diet the last 200 days is about between 70 and 90% starch. Take a look at our food pyramid for a second. You can see at the very top, use sparingly fats, oils, and sweets. It says not to eat a lot of sugar. If we look at the very bottom, the majority of calories, 6 to 11 servings, should be in the form of starch. And that would be like bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, biscuits, things like that. The average American consumes between 65 to 70% of their calories as starches. I want to show you something. Corn chips. Okay. And we look at the back of the label. Tell me how many sugars we have. 0 sugars. How many carbohydrates? 18 grams. That's per serving size, per 15 chips. Now let's look at flour tortillas. 0 sugars, 25 grams of carbohydrate. Let's not forget cornflakes. 3 grams of sugar and 35 grams of carbohydrate. I want to explain a very big confusion that people have related to carbohydrates. I think everyone knows that sugar is not that healthy. What about carbohydrates? If we deduct the sugars and the fiber, what is left? And the answer is starch. What's the difference between a sugar and a starch? A sugar molecule, like we call glucose, is like just one molecule of sugar. So sugar, and we're just going to talk about the basic foundation or building block of sugar, is glucose. But with a starch, you have a chain of glucose stuck together. Now you know what a starch is. And no, we're not just talking about like whole starches like potato or even like rice or even whole grains. I'm talking about the refined stuff like this right here, cornstarch. And by the way, we consume a tremendous amount of this refined cornstarch every single day in a lot of our foods. Let's just go back to this food pyramid for a second. You see the bottom foundation of the food pyramid should be mostly starches. 65% of our calories should be in the form of starches. These are actually hidden sugars. Ultra-processed starch is worse than sugar. These ultra-processed starches will jack up your blood sugar way more than just glucose. When you look at this food pyramid, what you're looking at is you're looking at a lot of refined carbohydrates we are recommended to eat. And the only reason that that's recommended is because the lobbyist groups are very, very powerful. And the food companies are extremely powerful. Only 4 companies control the entire grain market, and they have a tremendous amount of money. Unfortunately, the scientists who actually create the food guidelines are just unfortunately very corrupt, because it was found that over 90% of them had some type of vested interest or funding from big food. What's really unique about these starches is that they're incredibly profitable. You can buy 1 cubic ton of corn for $198. Don't worry, it gets more interesting, because right here I have frozen corn. This is not the type of corn that is in all these other products. There are 2 types of corn. You have field corn, or another name for that is dent corn, and then you have edible sweet corn, right? The type of stuff that you have in corn on the cob or you'd buy as frozen corn. And so this dent corn or field corn is not even edible, but this is what we use as the feed to fatten cattle to create a marbling effect of their muscles. And they make so many different things out of corn. They make ethanol. They turn the starch into corn flour, and they can make modified food starch, modified cornstarch, maltodextrin. In fact, there's over 50 different starches that they can make from various foods. And this is why they're a hidden sugar that you need to be aware of. Not only that, you can also make oil from corn, as in corn oil, which is part of the seed oil, which actually is very, very unhealthy, even though they say it's heart healthy. An average American consumes 8 gallons of seed oil every single year. Yes, we need to avoid sugar, but not many people are talking about the hidden sugar, the starches, especially the corn starches. Not only do they act like sugar, but they're also the most popular GMO food, which means they have traces of an herbicide called glyphosate. If we ask ourselves what would happen if we ate like a cow, well, we have been eating like a cow for quite some time, and you can see the results. We have obesity, fatty liver, we get heart disease, and the list goes on and on. The normal cow's stomach is not meant to digest grains. It's meant to break down grass. Grass is fermented with bacteria, and that fiber feeds the microbes. The problem with feeding grains to a cow is that the microbes now create this excess amount of acid, and they get what's called acidosis, and you get a lot of infection, and that's not very healthy for a cow. This is one of the big reasons why in their food they put a lot of antibiotics to counter this bacterial overgrowth. If we're consuming all this grain, we probably also have a similar thing. That's what happens when we consume the grains, and it creates inflammation in the gut, and that creates all sorts of allergies and abnormal fermentation in the wrong place. We need fermentation a little bit lower in the digestive tract, not in the small intestine. And so this is definitely not a what if problem. This is like we have been consuming very similar foods to cattle for quite some time. And if I put some dent corn in front of you right now to see if you could actually eat it, you would absolutely not want to eat it. It's disgusting. Unless we turn it into a powder and different things to make the texture a little bit easier to consume. An average person in America consumes 35.5 pounds of cornstarch every single year. They consume 60 pounds of corn sweetener every single year. High fructose corn syrup and other sweeteners that are made from corn. And as far as corn seed oils, an average consumer consumes 11.5 pounds of this seed oil every single year. If we wanted to add the soy oil into that mixture, you can add another 28 pounds. So what should we do? Number one, we should not support these intensive farming practices. I would highly recommend not buying food from cows that are in feedlots. Instead, start buying grass-fed, grass-finished beef. If you and I start buying grass-fed, grass-finished animal products, these very large industrial farms are going to have to allow cows to live on more space to consume grass, what they were designed to consume. But people will not do that unless they have the awareness of what's going on. And at the core of what we feed our animals is dent corn and soy. The more that you avoid these foods, you can help make a difference and shift the market from the conventional grain-fed cattle. On that note, let's talk about the healthiest food that you possibly can eat. And I put that information in this video right here. Check it out.